On to our other big focus tonight. Could the Epstein scandal topple the British Prime Minister? That's the question being asked not only in British political circles but around the globe as the late convicted sex offender and pedophile Jeffrey Epstein continues to claim scalps in country after country. Keir Starmer was never mixed up with Jeffrey Epstein but is in grave danger of now losing his job because of him. So far, Starmer has not been linked to any suggested wrongdoing revealed by the Epstein Files, but his decision to give another politician, Peter Mandelson, whose ties to Jeffrey Epstein are quite apparent in the latest documents, the vital job of UK ambassador to the United States has drawn the kind of backlash that may well end up singeing the Prime Minister himself. After the most tumultuous week in his premiership, Keir Starmer is facing calls from his political opponents and some party allies as well to step down from Britain's top job. The outrage is over the fact that Starmer appointed Peter Mandelson as Britain's top diplomat in the US, despite being aware of Mandelson's ties to Epstein. Documents recently released by the US Congress show that Mandelson maintained contact with Epstein after the convicted pedophile was released from jail and raised damning questions about Mandelson possibly sharing state secrets with the disgraced American financier. Starmer may have hoped that he had dealt with the Mandelson scandal when he fired him from the job of ambassador last September. That came after the US House of Representatives released files showing that Mandelson had maintained a close relationship with Epstein for years, even after his 2008 conviction on charges of solicitation of prostitution and procuring a child for prostitution. But the latest tranche of Epstein documents have brought a political earthquake. They show that while Mandelson was a member of former Prime Minister Gordon Brown's cabinet, and as that cabinet grappled with the seismic aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, he shared confidential, market-sensitive UK government information with Epstein. The information could feasibly have benefited the New York financier and his clients. The London Metropolitan Police are now investigating Mandelson's actions to see if they amount to misconduct in public office, a charge which carries a potential life sentence in jail. Even Starmer's office has stated that it has conducted its own review of the documents and it appears that safeguards were compromised in relation to sensitive information being shared improperly. Starmer has said Mandelson lied repeatedly and betrayed Britain. Last Wednesday, the British Prime Minister told lawmakers that Mandelson, a veteran Labour Party politician, had continuously lied to the government about the extent of his relationship with Epstein throughout the vetting for the ambassadorship. Starmer said, and I quote, "Mandelson betrayed our country, our parliament and my party. He lied repeatedly to my team when asked about his relationship with Epstein before and during his tenure as ambassador. I regret appointing him." While Starmer may not have been aware of the extent of Mandelson's ties to Epstein when he tapped him to represent Britain in Washington, D.C., British lawmakers have sharply criticized the government's vetting process, stressing that some elements of Mandelson's friendship with Epstein were public at the time he was given the position. The leader of the opposition Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, has questioned Starmer's judgment in elevating Mandelson to such a key diplomatic post. She said, "The Prime Minister cannot blame the process. He did know it was on Google. If the Conservative Research Department could find this information out, why couldn't Number 10? That skepticism has gained traction with British lawmakers across party lines, with Starmer facing huge backlash from even within his own party. Rachel Maskill, a member of Starmer's ruling Labour Party, has said the Prime Minister's position is untenable and he has no choice but to step down. Another lawmaker from the Labour Party, Jonathan Hinter, has said that Starmer's decision to appoint Mandelson as UK ambassador to the US was a catastrophic error of political and moral judgment. In a social media post, Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch called on Labour members of Parliament to unite with her opposition party in pushing for a no-confidence vote against Starmer. The Prime Minister has been in damage control mode. He has agreed to a demand by lawmakers to publicly release documents related to Mandelson's vetting and appointment. Last Thursday, He also made an apology to Epstein's victims and sought to quell the anger within his own party. Keir Starmer said, and I quote, "I'm sorry. Sorry for what has been done to you. Sorry that so many people with power failed you. Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointing him. I was lied to, deceived. Now, am I frustrated and angry that the good work we are doing gets out of focus? Of course, I'm angry and frustrated about that." That's what he said. But for a Prime Minister who, according to political pollster YouGov, already had historically low approval ratings last month before the latest Mandelson revelations, the future looks deeply uncertain. Bruising policy reversals on a number of unrelated issues last year had already weakened Starmer's authority within his party. A stagnant economy and immigration concerns have also seen public support for Trump's ally Nigel Farage's populist right-wing Reform Party surge, leading many analysts to question Keir Starmer's political acumen and the viability of his premiership. An analysis shared by the Eurasia Group puts the chances of Starmer keeping his job at just about 20%. US President Donald Trump, however, whose name appears in multiple Epstein Files, has no such concerns. This discrepancy perhaps reflects the relative political strength of Trump and the possible existential weakness of Keir Starmer. Some argue this shows that while British political institutions dedicated to accountability and investigation are functioning, Trump's control of the Justice Department and his stranglehold over the Republican Congress spares him from critical scrutiny. But above all, the global tentacles of the Epstein Files, also now reaching into Norway and Poland, underscore the massive footprint of a scandal that continues to spread nearly 7 years after the man at the center of it all died in a New York jail. In fact, public outrage over ties to Epstein is so acute in the United Kingdom that King Charles has stripped his own brother, an Epstein pal, the former Prince Andrew, of royal titles and forced him out of his lodge of the Windsor Castle estate. There's been no such equivalent action in the United States for anyone who had links with Epstein, who investigators ruled died by suicide in prison in 2019 before facing trial for sex trafficking and abuse of underage girls.
Questions about the nature and extent of the relationship, whether Mandelson had stayed, as was suggested, at Epstein's premises. And the answers given to those questions were intentionally intended to create the impression that Mandelson barely knew Epstein, deliberately to create that impression. I had no reason at that stage to think that was anything other than the truth, and therefore we proceeded. I regret making the decision to have appointed him in the first place. Had I known at the time what I know now or knew in September, I'd have never done it. And that's why today I've apologised for the fact that I appointed him in the first place and I believed his lies. I had no reason at the time to know they were lies. Subsequently, I found out them to be lies. And this week we found out way beyond the lies that we found out in September. We found out what he was up to in the aftermath of the 2008 crash, when most of the government and most of the country was doing its level best to make sure people didn't lose their jobs, their livelihoods and their savings. And at that time, he chose to disclose sensitive secrets to Epstein, almost simultaneously as receiving them.
Well, that's all the time we have on this edition of Global Pulse. Thanks so much for watching.